Welcome to another edition of The Greater Work, the audio outreach of Christ Worker Ministries. Listen in as experienced employee and minister, Sean Gibson brings biblical insights to help you worship God both in and with your labor. Now, let's get to work.
One of my favorite holidays to celebrate is Resurrection Sunday. It's a day when we can look back on the resurrection of Jesus from the dead. However, with the celebration, we must also admit that the situation that led to his death on the cross was being falsely accused for things he did not do. In this episode of the Greater Work podcast, we are going to take a look at when God allows you to endure being disciplined and punished for something you did not do. False accusations started early in the Bible, all the way back in the Garden of Eden. The serpent accused God of holding back some unique and special wisdom from Eve. Both Adam and Eve, they bought into this deception. And when they went along with the lie, they took the fruit. And unfortunately, instead of being elevated to being equal with God, just as the serpent had promised, Adam and Eve ended up losing their place with God, their home, and their authority. But what was worse than that was the fact that God was no longer their Lord. Thankfully, in time, God did redeem humankind and sent his Son into the world to forgive the sins for all the wrongs done, but also he brought humanity back into fellowship with himself. Later on in Genesis, we discover Joseph, who again was falsely accused in the workplace for something he did not do. However, God did not rescue Joseph right away. After a few years in jail, God turned the situation around. In doing so, Joseph was promoted to second in command in Egypt, all while preserving the Egyptians and even his family through a season of famine. Skipping ahead several thousand years, Jesus was accused of being an enemy of the state, trying to overthrow the Roman Empire. False witnesses were introduced and stories were manufactured to shed poor light on Jesus. They even took a sound bite from one of his speeches about tearing down the temple and he would rebuild it, and they used it against him. The judges and jury, frankly, they were bogus, and the trial was even more ridiculous. At first glance, it seemed that Jesus would hang on the cross as a result of false accusations. But look, you and I both know that there was more to the story than that. While it did appear that Jesus was killed because of some trumped-up charges, in reality, dying for humankind to atone for their sins is really what he came to do. There was a more fantastic plan at play, and when we too are falsely punished for something that we did not do, just like Jesus, there is an incredible plan from God being revealed. The Bible says in Isaiah 55 verse 9, "For as the heavens are higher than earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts." It goes on to say in 1 Corinthians 2:9, that no eye has seen, no ear has heard, and no heart has imagined what God has prepared for those that love him. God has a plan for you and your life. Despite what you're enduring, God will transform your false punishment into what promotes you, both for himself and humanity. In an interesting commentary from James, Jesus' half-brother, we see a man that grew up as a younger brother of Jesus and knew him better than most. They ate together, they slept in the same house, and even lived together. If there was a person that knew Jesus and his character, it was his half-brother James. After the death, burial, and resurrection of his brother, James wrote these words in James 1 verse 12. "Blessed is the man who perseveres under trial, because when he has stood his test, he will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those that love him." James knew what his brother went through, and it hurt him deeply. And it was through his brother's example that he learned this principle: no trial, no crown. My friend, just as Jesus said, "Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." When you are persecuted at work for something that you did not do, please know that God takes note. The Bible is very clear in 1 Peter 2:19, "For if anyone endures the pain of unjust suffering because of consciousness of God, this is to be commended." Strong's Concordance of Bible words defines the word commended as a gift or blessing brought to man by Jesus Christ himself. If you will embrace this season as sent by God as an opportunity to receive a blessing, Jesus will see to it that you are gifted and blessed by him. Just as we know that God works all things together for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose, we also know that God makes everything beautiful in his time. Today, if it seems that a coworker has succeeded in getting you in trouble or even fired for what you did not do, take heart and don't be discouraged. You are following in a long line of God's people that took a hit. And just like them, you will see deliverance from God. You will work again, and you will be productive. You must embrace the fact that it is God that will promote you through this. Regardless of how challenging it may seem and appear, He has a better plan for your tomorrow. Join me next week on the Greater Work podcast as we finish up our series on false accusations in the workplace, and we look at how we can grow closer to God during this challenging situation. Also visit christworker.org for additional tools and teachings on how you too can experience the presence of God in your work life.
Thanks for listening to The Greater Work, a Christ Worker Ministries podcast. The Greater Work is supported by hardworking listeners just like you. To learn more about Christ Worker Ministries and how you can become part of our growing outreach, visit christworker.org.